Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse, and today I wanted to talk about something that I feel is very important with you, and that is discussing poop hits the fan type of stuff with your children. And as you probably noticed, I don't have my glasses on, and there's a reason for that. I felt like this particular topic warranted real honest to goodness, let me just sit down with you in a chair and tell you straight what I think. And I wanted to be able to look you in the eye and tell you what I feel like I have for you today. So let's delve into how do we discuss these weighty issues with our children. And I'm coming at this more from a psych nursing standpoint. I did 2 years with a focus in adolescent pediatric psych. So I feel like that in that 2 years I definitely got down pretty well how to break bad news to children. Worse stuff, frankly, than from their perspective, than poop hits the fan. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. And your approach to telling your children about what we're going to do when poop hits the fan, and really laying a groundwork for why the poop is going to hit the fan, that's going to really be determined based on their age and on their comprehension. As a general rule, girls, especially from age 7 to 12, they are really ahead of boys as far as their comprehension of and their emotional, how shall we say, their emotional readiness to deal with issues like this. They're typically a little bit more mature and they're a little bit more ahead of boys as far as that goes. So one way to explain to your children why poop will probably hit the fan, especially for young children, you may just want to start off with something like, you know, kids, there are bad guys out in the real world, kind of like there are in movies or in fairy tales. There are bad guys out there, and they typically don't look like the big bad ugly characters in the movies. They look like you and me. So it makes it kind of hard sometimes to be able to figure out who's bad, because they don't really look exactly like a bad guy. And then from that, you can segue into, you know how in movies, little ones, you know how in movies that there are good guys to come and save us? There probably won't be any good guys. We have to be the good guys. You and me, mommy and daddy, we have to be the good guys. And in order to be the good guys, we have to be brave. So laying that groundwork right there with your children of the bad guys, the good guys, and that we have to be brave because we are probably going to be the good guys. So laying that groundwork will probably help them, especially if they're young, on the order of 5 to 6, maybe even 7 to 8 years old, just depending on wherever they're at. That will hopefully help them understand the why behind things. Now, it gets a little bit more difficult to determine where your kids are at when they hit the 9 to 12 and really 13 to 14 age ranges. Girls, I actually have had quite a few discussions on the Federal Reserve type of stuff and monetary system, the interdependence of all of our systems. I've had many discussions like this just in random conversation with girls ages 9 to 17. And I tell you what, the girls really get it. They seem to get this much better than the boys. The girl's typical response when you tell them this is for a tween or a teenage girl, a girl's typical response is, oh, whoa, really? So the Federal Reserve, it does all that? And, oh, gee, this is bad. Well, what do we do about it? And I think the reason for that is because girls tend to hit puberty earlier, that God has kind of given us this mentality to have to, on some level, know how to prep. That mentality is kind of there, hopefully, in puberty age girls. And they tend to get this a whole lot easier than the guys approximately their same age. So don't be really surprised with that. I would just use your discretion as a parent. But with these teenagers, they understand a whole lot more than you think. They really do. And we ought to give them credit for having a functioning mind that works. And I'm sure you do as a parent, because I'm sure you probably really love your children and are their biggest fan. Now, when addressing the poop hits the fan issues with your children, one thing to consider here is that regardless of their age, there are some basic fundamental things that each child wants to know, basic questions that each child wants answered. And the first and foremost among them is, Mommy and Daddy, what's going to happen to us? They may be really little and not adequately able to verbalize this from just beyond, am I going to be okay? But every child wants to know that their integral family unit is going to be okay, because that is their support system. That is their structure, and that's what they see more than anything else, is their reality, is how their family is functioning. So being able to answer that when your child asks you, what's going to happen to us? What do we do? Well, the first thing to really do is to assure them that Mommy and Daddy are never going to leave you. As long as we are alive, we are never going to leave you. And when you tell them this, you better be able to back that up in all of its facets and everything that leads up to it. You need to be able to back that up. And the second prong, really, of being able to keep them safe is in love. We need to make sure that obedience is something that is taught. And this is probably deviating from what is socially acceptable, but you need to have an understanding with your children that whenever you say, we've got to go, they snap to and yes, okay, we're going to go. There's not going to be any of this, let's run out in the yard and see if we can't find Sparky and bring it. No, you go. You get your stuff and you go. If you're bugging out, if that is your plan. If it's not your plan, adapt as needed. But obedience in your children, it needs to be something that is understood as being very important, because they need to listen to you, because they're going to need to take their directions from you. So the other thing here to calm a little child's heart is, if you are a follower of Christ, you've got a weapon in your arsenal here that's pretty darn good, and that is that when your child asks you, are we going to be okay, Mommy? Are we going to be safe? If you are a follower of Christ, you can wholeheartedly tell your children, you know what, Susie? Jesus told us that he would never leave us or forsake us, and Jesus never lies. So if you're not a follower of Christ, then you do whatever you feel like is necessary. But if you are a follower of Christ, then that's a pretty darn good weapon to be able to combat fear with. And the last thing that you can really use to assure a child, aside from the fact that you're never going to leave them and that you're always going to love them, is that Mommy and Daddy are preparing. We're getting ready. We're storing food. We're storing weapons that can help defend us from the bad guys. We are doing everything that we can in order to keep our family safe, and we're going to stay together regardless of this. So hopefully this has been helpful for you in some way, shape, or form. I just wanted to respond to some questions which I had received, and I felt like this particular message needed to get out there. So for now, this is Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.